resources function is one of the most unique areas in the workplace that continually reinvents and evolves to meet the ever-changing needs of businesses. And the evolution of HR from a personnel department handling payroll and employee records to the department managing talent and corporate culture is one of the most significant transformations we've witnessed in the business world. With HR hitting its stride over the past decade and being propelled into the global spotlight because of the pandemic, the function has gained more credibility and respect, leading to its strategic role in helping guide companies. With that, hello and welcome to our special feature, ZingHR presents Purpose-Driven HR for Business Outcomation, partnered by ET Now, an engaging and comprehensive series that seeks to understand how ZingHR's Outcomation can aid people leaders to take a purpose-driven approach that intersects with corporate strategy to help boost business outcomes. And with that, I'd like to welcome our panel of subject matter experts to give their thoughts on today's discussion.
Demystifying Purpose-Driven HR for Business Outcomation.
We have with us Founder, CEO and Managing Director of ZingHR, Prasad Rajappan, CHRO of Godrej Properties, Megha Goyal, and Member of Executive Board for HR, IT, Safety and Digital Enterprise at Maruti Suzuki, Rajesh Uppal. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us, and I'd love to kick off the conversation with you, Prasad. So for the benefit of our viewers and for sake of some context setting, if you could help describe these terms like purpose-driven HR and how it leads to business outcomation in layman language, sir.
For long, we have been talking of HR as a business partner. That was the last decade. Of late, especially after the pandemic and maybe sometime before that, HR is now expected to be driving business.
Absolutely.
HR is expected to drive the change. And if you see, most of the successful HR professionals are part of the board, or they talk the board language of finance and outcomes. Mm-hmm. So we realize that if HR needs to have its place of glory, they need to be focusing on the boardroom priorities.
Right.
Is right from the top line, EBITDA margins, diversity, succession planning, market growth. Mm-hmm. So we have been talking of something which is purpose-led HR, which meets those requirements. Mm-hmm. And we coined this term called outcomation because there has been a tendency of people to do automation without outcomes.
Sure.
So people have been talking bots and AI. They said, I also want to do AI. So our answer to them is, let us look at the purpose and do automation where there is only outcomes. And that's a term comes outcomation.
With that, Rajesh, I'd like to come over to you because for the automobile space, it's perhaps an unprecedented time in human history. You know, the industry is witnessing disruption at a pace like never before, which leads me to believe there's several interesting strategic conversations happening in that boardroom. So how have the boardroom's expectations of IT leaders, for example, or human resource leaders, for example, changed and evolved over time?
Our industry is once in a 100-year kind of transformation which is going on. And focusing on how you drive this transformation going forward is very, very critical. A couple of points on this. One is very clearly HR has to take a role of creating a right org structure to drive this change in the company and also ensure that you have a right people to do this job going forward. And kind of investment you're doing should give you returns on that to work on is a very, very important area of the HR, which is part of the board driving this. Now, we created a separate entity whose role is not to really do running operations now. You create a future business for Maruti Suzuki. And now that's the very clear, a separate team started with a very small 4 to 5 people. Now we have more than 500 people working only on digital and only looking forward to the future in the organization. And the projects are done not with the mindset of automation. Here, we wanted digital in the company to be really creating value for the company than doing automation. So we involved all the senior leaders with the development journey for them and also asking them to identify which are the areas you can adopt digital in the company and then create value for the organization. So in the whole journey, all of the leaders decided on these are the areas which we want to improve ourselves. And happy to say almost all the idea got implemented very, very fine with the creating value because it was being driven by them, which has been very successful for us to drive change.
Tapping into your experience, at Godrej Properties, Megha, how have you leveraged technology specifically to essentially help drive business outcomes? Give us some examples.
From a technology perspective, we look at a framework per se, right? So now technology is something that can impact everything possible at an organization. We look at a framework to say efficiencies, effectiveness, experience. Efficiencies talks about, how can you do work better? Work which is mundane, repetitive. Can you actually automate it to reduce the time getting spent there and getting done in a much more efficient fashion? Let's talk about effectiveness. How are you going to use data-based insights to take decisions? Or how are you going to use technology to enhance collaboration and communication within your organization? When we are looking at large organizations which are spread across multiple locations, we are using technology to communicate what the organization wants to talk from a purpose perspective, from a mission perspective, and how the organization wants to align. You come to an experience part of it, it is about how an employee is experiencing an organization. I always say beautiful technology is like the first level of joy, right? And if you're able to give beautiful technology which adds to an employee experience in every aspect. So there are a lot of these applications at every aspect. We're using technology to a very large extent to enhance inclusion. How do we communicate stories of people? We're doing a lot of work in LGBT inclusion, and we've been doing it in multiple ways out there.
Absolutely. And Prasad, coming to you, now that we've just heard from two industry titans, perhaps ahead of the curve compared to their peers or compared to other players in the market. So how do you suggest that those players play catch up?
Like I said, progressive HR people are people who are ahead of the curve. And the good trend is, at least in this market, in Asia market, right, from India to Middle East and Southeast Asia, we're seeing lots of such examples happening where people are driving the business based on the HR from the business purpose perspective. So one of the things we have been having a framework called purpose versus means. Okay, it's a framework which allows people to distill between what is the purpose and what is the means.
The means to get there.
Yeah. Most of the time, when we started, transformation journey, we are clear about the purpose. But we have seen that inadvertently, we start focusing on the means. And over the next 6 months or 1 year, we are so busy and including putting technology pieces in place that end of 6 months or 1 year, they say, I've not met the purpose.
Right.
Because that is where people, HR heads have to now focus whether it's a purpose. And the purpose could be all that what Megha and Rajesh just mentioned. It could be right from the EBITDA margins. It could be looking how do we look at profits. It could be looking at diversity. It could be looking at career and succession planning. Today's world has changed because personalization has come in a big way. Technology is no longer for the masses. Earlier, maybe 10 years back, technology, you used to really, create a rule and give it to the company and the people. Different rules for white collar, different rules for senior management, different rules for workmen. Today is the day of personalization.
Right.
Even career planning, no longer people want the HR or management to plan their career. They want a tool where they can plan their career. That's where technology comes in place. So again, to just summarize, if the HR professionals are really, really very critical on looking at the purpose on a periodic basis, I think they can reach the success faster.
Well, Rajesh, I think based on what you heard from your other fellow panelists, right, the expectations of the HR function have certainly been on the rise and steadily so. But how essentially do you ensure that what they deliver is in line with the business's broader objective? Aligning those two is all easier said than done, sir.
I think it's all start from where do you position HR in the organization. Now, in our case, it's at the board level where you are part of the board deciding the business strategies together along with them to work on, and convert that business strategy into the HR agenda for the year or for the couple of years to work on in an organization, and try to make sure that this converts into a vertical projects to work on, which is more cross-functional in nature, where business users and the HR together are driving those projects and change the way the existing business is running, and we're trying to change that to go forward and all that, which is governed periodically to ensure that we achieve the goals which we are looking forward to. So I think right from starting on the business objective, creating HR agenda and drive the projects is the way we have been trying to drive those changes into the company to look at that. Whether it is succession planning, whether it's the right kind of hiring for the company, or whether it's looking forward to the campuses and get the right employees for the company. I think all of this are very technology based now. and which is both technology and experience together working for the employees to ensure that you will achieve the right objective coming out of the game.
And Megha, if we were to talk about artificial intelligence in particular, technologies such as big data, artificial intelligence, machine learning, they are really ruling the roost. But how will you leverage artificial intelligence in particular to help streamline more day-to-day functions within the HR department, like payroll processing, for example? Because all of that in the form of outcomation, of course, then gives the HR team bandwidth to focus on more strategic initiatives.
I would be slightly provocative here when I would say that, gone are the days when organizations are still trying to sort out payroll. And I would want to urge here that all those board members should also play their part in terms of encouraging businesses to become more purpose-driven as a business and allow the people function to be more purpose-driven. What we are doing at Godrej Properties, I would be humble enough to say it's just a start. We are currently, really trying to use technology to understand employee trends, right? So employees, how are they doing? Are they feeling engaged? We are really trying to understand, are there any trends in terms of understanding if they are likely to be remaining with the organization or they're likely to leave.
Right.
People call it the predictive retention or predictive attrition models. And we are working around integrating a lot of soft and hard measures, which are available inside and outside the organization to kind of understand employee behavior and make predictive trends around there. Right. And we're actually seeing that what the data is showing versus what we are actually seeing on the ground, there is some kind of a correlation. And if you're able to just integrate it much better and use it so much more proactively and effectively, we can make a real difference out there.
Prasad, what do you make of that? Because I think Megha has just cited examples of outcomation, but through a very human lens.
In AI, what do? Are you using for transactional, business operations, or strategic?
Right.
And how much is the usage? Like I said, even if you can bring back to the purpose versus mean framework, why do you want to use AI? Is it personalization? And what Megha just mentioned about doing the pulse surveys, I think we call it as emotional sensors. So what is technology enabled is to put an emotional sensor in each person's body,
right?
Which is invisible.
Yes.
So you can, on a real time, know what is the mood of the person, unlike the annual surveys which used to happen maybe a decade back. So technology can be used as a weapon. I always give an example. This is like a nuclear bomb. AI or generative AI chat GPTs can be like a nuclear bomb, could be used negatively, but it can be also used to generate electricity and livelihood for people. So AI, if you know the technology and if you know what purpose you want to do, you're going to be super successful.
I pose this to all of our panelists. So for companies that are perhaps still struggling to find their footing between purpose versus means, what words of wisdom might you have for them? How do they essentially take that first step towards becoming a purpose-driven HR function that's aligned with the company's underlying business objectives and therefore making outcomation happen?
Simple. Think like a founder or a CEO. Then at the CEO or the boardroom member, you start talking of top line, margins, people care. If you look at those things and go back to your function and say, what am I doing? Is it a purpose or a means? And I can tell you, we have done surveys, we have seen that almost as high as 60% are means, which could be eliminated.
Sure.
The another 30-35%, which can't be eliminated, but can be automated or use technology. And then that leaves the time for the 5 or 8% of time for the strategic thing. So if they're paranoid about being the owner of the business, reading the balance sheets, understanding where the numbers are going, where the trends coming, like Rajesh said, that entire technology is changing.
Right.
If they're being almost like wearing the hat of an owner of the company, I think it'll be very easier.
Well, Rajesh, curious to hear your take on the same question, sir.
I think one area, the whole manufacturing always has been focused on the shop floor efficiencies. I think people are not focused on the white collar efficiencies in the organizations. That's where I guess I've seen lots and lots of people underdoing the job of their level than they should be doing and all. So that's where this whole automation and the AI comes into place to really make sure that you automate and outsource all the mundane work so that you can focus on the value adding job at your level. Is the one area of work which I've been focusing on very deeply in the company. Secondly, I think important is now you have lots and lots of knowledge available in the company for years together over there. As a company, we have 40 years of knowledge, what worked, what didn't work today and all. But I think consuming that for day-to-day decision making is always a big challenge. That's where I think we are putting in a framework of generative AI in place to do that. So that those either it could be a company level information which is available to all the people, or a vertical level information available only to those people in that vertical, in a very simple form of interface, which is you ask question and give you right answer from there and all. You give you summaries, paragraphs, presentation out of that, so that you can consume that to improve your work efficiency and much more effectively. Since this data is all internal to the company, increasing the efficiency of the employees using technology is one big area of opportunity. We have been trying to really work very, very strongly into this area to improve the whole effectiveness of the business.
Rajesh brings up a very interesting point in that I believe only a fraction of data that's made available to enterprises is actually meaningfully leveraged. Oftentimes to the detriment of the company. What's the solution?
So I always start with a personal vision, right? So I feel out there, firstly, the HR professional need to have a personal vision. And let me give you an example.
Please.
A simple statement could be that I am trying to recruit people for my organization. Or a different statement could be, and that is what we follow here at Godrej Properties, that we want to be the talent factory for the sector.
Right.
Okay. Now, once you decide to aim higher, now how to become a talent factory, you want to reach out to a lot more candidates, right? And they could be at campuses, they could be experienced candidates. Now, how would you actually leverage technology to reach out to such wide range of candidates? We recently did a campus program where we reached out to 60 different colleges all across India. So it's only technology which can enable some of those things. If we don't aim high, we don't look at areas where technology can really add leverage to us, we're actually not using technology well. We are making a boring case and which people wouldn't buy, and even the users wouldn't feel so excited about. Bring a purpose, bring a larger vision to yourself to start with. And that is how you would really innovate out there and kind of change the market scene.
So Prasad, this is future of work. It's constantly making headlines, but the underlying premise continues to evolve. Where does technology fit in defining what future work actually constitutes?
We largely believe there will be no jobs, there will be only work. And people are talking of purpose, and like I said, Megha said in the previous section, purpose is not only for the organization, purpose is for the individuals also.
It is.
So how do I align the aspirations of people to the organization? And like I mentioned, we have to look at the profits, we have to look at people, and we have to also look at the planet. So I think once if we can strike a balance between all the three, which also brings, and today if you see a lot of youngsters and all even the senior people want to focus on the environment, sustainability. No longer it is a boardroom conversation of 2% CSR fund.
Right.
People are talking, how do I engage in social activities? How do I focus on environment thing? So I think the future of work will be a combination of the heart and the head and the hand, which I call, because it can't be just for the head and the hand, it has to be heart also into it.
Right.
The future of work will be a combination of technology enabling the future of the work, which we call as the next new. So after a pandemic, there's a lot of the future of work happening. The business are going to change.
Right.
Business models are going to change. Hence, the next new is going to take over, and all of us are imperative that we are geared up for that.
All right. Well, Megha, what's your take?
So I'll take a step back and I'll say that future of work actually entails future of the workplace and future of the workers, right? So we have to think of all of these in totality when we are able to define future at work. Let's take an example of, what we are all experiencing. So at this point of time, post-COVID, is this whole piece of work from home or hybrid working. What we are doing out here is to really be focused on what the business really needs to have. We are a developer organization. We're involved in the business of construction. We cannot be having our employees sitting at home and buildings getting constructed. Technology so far has not gone to that state. We would love for that to happen for sure. So, what does the future future of workplace look like for us? It means that we would want to have our employees go onto the work sites, and we will have knowledge workers who are probably sitting from offices, and they can support them as they require. Right. What does the future of workers mean in that ways? How are we enabling, services, engagement, welfare for people who are differently stabilized, right? So a person who's working at a site would require very different aspects as compared to someone who's a knowledge worker and kind of working from a head office or a regional office, right? So when you look at the work and the business and what is the business looking to achieve and kind of then extrapolate it down, you would be able to define what the future of that workplace and that worker would look like.
And, I'd be very curious to hear your take, Rajesh, within the four walls of Maruti Suzuki in very tangible terms.
Future work for me is, having multiple generation of people working together for the same purpose. So how do you ensure that you take care of their needs of each one of them? So the future of work is all about flexibility. And also, in addition to your normal worker, today I have around 70 digital workers working, which is 24/7 and doing all the processing, which earlier was done by the people around. So creating the right kind of culture and capability with the right kind of flexibility to ensure that you really manage the purpose of the business more effectively and more efficiently. I think the change we need to bring in. And when I talk about this culture, I think, again, it's become very different now in the organization, where you have multiple kind of, businesses are running. Like you have a manufacturing, you have a R&D, you have a marketing and sales, which need a different culture of working to be made available to them and with right kind of technology to support them. How do you make sure the multiple culture within the same organization, I think, is the change which is coming in the future.
And another question which I'd like to pose to all three of my panelists, I'll start with you, Megha. A company's success story is now no longer limited to strictly the balance sheet. There is this concept of the triple bottom line. And sustainability is now taking center stage along with environmental, social, and governance principles. Very much a critical business objective for all enterprises, right? So I'd love your take on how business outcomation and how a purpose-driven or purpose-led HR function can make that vision a reality.
This is something that should have started a lot of years ago, but we are very happy that now people are openly talking about it, with investors being really aware of organizations which are looking at people, planet, and profits, and not only profits, and kind of working on all of those spaces. I think it comes from, again, how the purpose of the business is determined. And, while you may want to say 2% CSR spends, etc., real work happens when you align it to purpose and you want to do something for a long-term view. I also feel that now, there is a lot of need for authentic conversations out there, and people are able to really, figure it out, saying that, who is doing a lip service and for the sake of just putting some things out there, and who are doing real work in terms of, ensuring that we are able to balance it all on all sides. I think technology is really helping us to integrate all of them. So, for example, an organization like Godrej Properties, which is multiple employees built across multiple locations, how do you bring it all together, communicate the same messages around, and ensure that we are all on track and able to measure them on a real-time basis? And, how do you use it even beyond that to create further purpose, to advocate more and more, kind of, takes the message forward.
Absolutely. And Rajesh, what's your take?
I think sustainability for us is a board agenda. And somewhere, this is being, this whole organization report to the board directly, and we make sure that we measure what is required to be done. And there's a measured improvement happening every quarter, every year on that and all, which need to be reported. Okay, today is mandatory to report it to the investors, but also internally targets are set and improve that. So creating a right organization to do that, giving them a measurable targets, so that we achieve our long-term goal of net zero by 2050, which is we have planned for that.
Prasad, over to you.
So we at ZingHR believe that ESG, like I said, can't be only a boardroom priority or only people who can do it. And today, if this earth has to really focus on ESG, it has to go to each citizen.
Right.
So what have we done at ZingHR? We have built the entire ESG into the platform itself. While we cater to the BRSR report for the board, we have made into KPIs and OKR for managers. So a lot of our customers use that. We converted a lot of rewards and recognition for employees based on ENS largely. On one side, we have tied up with organizations like Akshay Patra, Nanikali, Meta Social, Tata Cancer Hospital, where employees now, when they get a rewards and recognition, instead of buying a pizza, they say, I want to work for 4 hours in an organization.
Right.
So I think for us, I think ESG is also a cultural change. And I think that is what we are trying to bring, how to bring E&S into corporate things. And if that happens, if millions of people are going to do that, then we don't have to have forced 2% quota for the corporates.
And I have got a closing question for all three of my panelists. And Prasad, I'd love to kick off with you. In a single sentence, sir, for organizations that are looking to become more purpose-driven in their HR function in order to essentially help generate that business outcomation impact, one word of advice, sir, or one thought?
Look at people, look at profits, and look at the planet.
Right.
Make them the purpose for the organization.
Can't go wrong if you do that. Megha, over to you.
I think he's already covered it in a very good way. I would say that look at the purpose, right? And drive your own, make your own purpose as well. Every single employee in the organization should have a purpose. That's where you bring commitment and engagement in an organization.
And Rajesh, I'll give you the last word, the key to the HR function, generating that business outcomation, sir.
I think, though I think what Prasad and Megha said is fine, but I think most important part is how to really communicate this whole vision to right and last person in the value chain in the company is very, very critical. So here is the importance of the very strong, structured communication, and with the tools available now and with all the, capability in the organization now, I think having a very strong communication process to ensure that everybody is aligned is a very critical part.
Well, a wonderful set of comments and takeaways from all three of our panelists, Prasad, Megha, Rajesh. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us and digging deep to share so many anecdotes from your personal and professional journeys. Thank you once again.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
With that, our special feature, ZingHR presents Purpose-Driven HR for Business Outcomation, partnered by ET Now, comes to a close. Thanks for tuning in.